Hey guys, my name is Helen, and in today's video, I am spilling all the tea on how to negotiate your pay. I am a former recruiter, and 3 years after graduating college, I've been able to more than double my pay, keeping into account these tips. So if you want to learn how to do that, keep watching this video and we'll get right into it. So I mentioned that I'm a former recruiter. My first job straight out of college, I worked as a recruiter within the tech industry. While it wasn't where I initially saw myself going, it was such an amazing base and foundation for my career and for my career growth. And this is why. So as a recruiter, I was able to get like a firsthand behind the scenes look at the hiring process and what that's like, what it's like to interview, and what it's like to have an eye-catching resume, what it's like to negotiate pay. While working as a recruiter, I worked with people on all different levels within organizations. So I was working with field service technicians making $15 an hour, software developers and engineers making $60 an hour, all the way up to like architects making $100 to $200+ an hour, which at the time, as a recent graduate, was just insane to me. Like, I couldn't even fathom that there were people out there making this much money, like as contractors. So I will say that most of the jobs that I worked were contract based, and I feel like with contract based work, sometimes the pay is a little bit higher because it's just like a short sprint, like I don't know, 6 to 9 months, sometimes a year, and then you're just hired on for the project and you're done. But nonetheless, these tips are definitely helpful for people that are going into like a more stable, just permanent role. The good thing about being a recruiter straight out of college was that it taught me some very valuable skills. Like, for example, how to put together an eye-catching resume, how to answer certain interview questions, what the entire hiring process looks like from start to finish. And so today I want to talk about negotiating pay, and we'll talk about what you need to do in preparation for your interview, because that's really where it starts. You need a solid foundation beforehand. And then what to look out for, what to do during the negotiation stage or during your interview, and then post-interview, once you get an offer letter, all that good stuff. So first things first, you have to make sure that you do your research. This is so important. I cannot stress this enough. First thing you're going to want to do is to Google the job title in your city at your experience level. So what does that look like? Let's say you're applying to different marketing positions. You might type in marketing manager in Atlanta tech industry or whatever it may be. And that'll give you a better idea of what the market's already offering people. There's usually like a range, and it'll show you, there's different tools online, and it'll show you like a low, mid, and high range of like where people usually fall for this type of role. And so you can use that just based on your experience level to kind of give you an idea of what to expect. And this is very important because you need to already go in there knowing what number you're shooting for before you get to the interview. And another thing that you need to do prior to the interview is put together a brag sheet. And by brag sheet, I mean, put together all the different achievements or accomplishments that you've had, any projects, important projects that you worked on, any like certifications that you have, if you're bilingual, if you have outstandingly, like if you have amazing organizational skills, if you're a great collaborator, communicator, blah, 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 blah. You need to make sure that you're able to talk yourself up. And I know that's not the easiest thing to do sometimes, but it's so important because what you're doing when you're walking into this interview, you have to sell yourself, and you have to sell yourself in a way that comes across as the company seeing that, wow, if we bring this person on, they're going to bring a lot of value to our team. They're going to help us reach our goals. They're going to interact well with the team. And that's essentially what you want to do and what you want to express, right? So it's not I'm so amazing, look at me, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not what you're doing. You're just showing the interviewer that you would be a great asset to their team. That's pretty much it. So the reason that you want to have this brag sheet is because once it comes down to negotiating pay, you want to be able to pull on these things. Like I launched a new, we launched a new CRM platform at my previous company, and I was the lead on the project, and we were able to do it within the established time frame. Everything was delivered on time. We were able to increase effectiveness and efficiencies and blah 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 blah, right? All of that kind of stuff. People love to hear numbers, and if you've won any awards at your previous company, make sure that you bring that up too. As big or as small as they may be. And even if you're coming straight out of college and you don't necessarily have a ton of experience yet, if you were involved in clubs or, you got president's list or anything like that, just anything that shows how committed you are is valuable. Look back at the different things that you've worked on throughout your college career to see what you can use as well. Before I forget, I really want to stress the importance of making sure that when you search on Google, you specifically look for the city or metropolitan area that you are applying to for this job, because compensation will vary tremendously from city to city. So we all know California, the standard of living there is just crazy high. And so a position in Atlanta and in California, although you might be doing the exact same job, the pay can be drastically different. So you want to make sure that you are going in with the most accurate information. So you're not going in expecting a super high salary because you looked at information or stats based on California salaries, and then you go into your Atlanta job interview and you're just like, well, that's not what I expected at all. So very important. Once you've done all of your research ahead of time, we are now in the interview. You're killing it. You are just wowing and charming the interviewer. And, the question comes up. What are your salary expectations? The best advice that I can give you is do not be the first person to throw out a number. This has actually helped me in the past, and it has saved me from myself, because I had done all these things that I had shared with you guys. I had done the research, knew kind of what to expect. In a way, it was a new role for me, so I wasn't entirely sure. But I went in there with an expectation, and had I brought up a number first, I would have severely undercut my pay, and that would have been my own fault. So when they ask you the question, what is your salary expectation? This is how you should answer. My pay expectations are flexible. However, I would like to know what the job is currently, or what this position is offering. So put it back on them. You want them to tell you, hey, this is kind of where we're looking to start people off. That way you really have a sense of okay, this is the number. Because like I was mentioning before, for me, had I gone in with the number that I had in mind, I would have taken a $35,000 pay cut. And nobody wants to do that. So you never want to leave extra money on the table. If it's better in your pockets than in theirs. And just please, please, please make sure that you always put it back on them. So once they've given you a number, okay, this fits within, the range that I had originally thought, or this is way above what I had originally expected, whatever it may be. You now have the ability to say, okay, if this is within the range that I was looking for, perfect, right? Or if you want to push it a little bit more, and I guess this is kind of depending on everyone's tolerance to risk, you can always go back and push it more. You can throw it back on them and say, thank you for sharing that with me. How flexible is that number? And keep in mind, they might give you a number, they might give you a range. I was given a range, and because I had a little extra information than I think most people usually do, I knew that other people had been interviewing for this role. I knew there were other people with more experience than what I currently had at the time. And so I decided to play it a little bit more safe, and I didn't go all the way to the top of the range that they gave me. I went maybe 5,000 below, just because I wanted to be a little bit more competitive. because I knew that there was definitely some other like really good candidates that were being interviewed as well. But that's not necessarily the right thing to do in every occasion. Maybe you come in, they tell you the range, and you feel like your work is valued higher. You need to make that known. So you pull out, you mentally bring up your brag sheet, and that's where you start pulling off and you start saying, okay, well, these are the types of projects that I've worked on that I see would also be in line with the type of responsibilities for the role that we're currently discussing. And this is why I feel like I would deserve X amount of money above, because I know that I will be able to deliver on X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. So you need to be able to go in there and say, hey, this is why I deserve more money and why I am the best candidate for this role. And I tell this to everyone, even with the first number that a company will throw out there as an offer, I feel like there's still always more money on the table. $5,000 to $10,000 is not going to make or break a company. That's just, it is what it is. Like, I've seen some crazy budgets just from working in, you know, the jobs that I've been in. And let me tell you, people will spend $5,000 to $10,000 on just the smallest things that at the end of the day aren't even worth it. So fight for your money, try to get the best offer that you can. Maybe you have gone back and forth and you tried to get a higher offer, but they are just not budging. What do you do then? There's a few options here. You could go back and then see if you could negotiate other aspects of your offer. It might look like, you know, having increased time off. Maybe the standard is 2 to 3 weeks. Maybe you ask for an additional week. Maybe it's a job that's only on site, which, you know, now in the midst of a pandemic, you know, most of us, I myself, work remote, and a lot of people do. So I feel like there's more flexibility in that area. But even still, there are jobs that, you know, they prefer people to come into the office. And if that's the case, maybe you ask for flexibility there, like, hey, I'm really interested in this job. I see a lot of growth here, but since the starting salary seems to be so strict, are we able to negotiate 2 days work from home per week, adding some additional PTO days, things like that build your overall like compensation package? So that's your first option, to find other ways to kind of beef up your compensation package. A second option would be for you to really analyze and say, okay, what's the opportunity here? How much is it going to benefit me? Would I be willing to receive a pay cut, knowing that in a few years I'm going to be able to make that up? Or, and this is kind of what I suggest, is, you know, keep applying. You do not have to accept the first offer that comes your way when you are in the interview process. A lot of the times what will happen is we grow unhappy in the current roles that we're in, so we start applying to different jobs. The first interview that comes around, we get super excited for it, we take it, we get an offer, and then we're like, okay, this is the end of my job search, which in reality, it should not be that way. You should give yourself as much opportunity as possible, go into different interviews, see what the market is offering, and really evaluate what the different opportunities and options are out there for you. During my last job search, I was very fortunate in that I had 2 interviews lined up kind of right around the same time, and I got an offer for the first interview. Like, it was a really quick turnaround, like less than, I don't know, maybe 24 hours. I had an offer in my hand, which in that moment, it feels amazing. And you're like, okay, this is my ticket out. Like, I can do this. Like, I'm going to take it and all this stuff. But it wasn't a terrible opportunity, but I didn't see that much growth potential there. It was kind of a smaller company. The responsibilities were kind of just very like in a box. I like to do different things. I like my days to look different from, you know, Monday, Tuesday, like the things that I'm working on to be a little bit varied. And there it seemed like it was just going to be the same day in and day out. And the location was a little bit farther out for me. It was going to be a bit of a pay increase, but not that much where I really saw it being worthwhile. And so I knew that there was this other job that I was interviewing for. And mind you, like, I already had the other one in the bag. Like, the offer was there. And I was like, you know what? Let me just take my chances. And so here's another thing. Don't feel like you have to respond to the job offer right away. I was actually working with a recruiter during this time, and I let her know, like, I was very transparent. It's important to be transparent if you're working with a recruiter as well. I let her know, like, hey, I have this other opportunity lined up and the interview's tomorrow. So if they're fine waiting on me, tell them to give me another day or two just to kind of process the offer and see what I'd like to do. And I'm going to go on this other interview. I go on this other interview and it went pretty well. I was still just kind of like I said, I knew that there were other people that were interviewing for this position as well. And it was pretty competitive. So I felt like I had done a good job, but I didn't quite know like where I stood in comparison to these other people that were interviewing. So I was just kind of like, oh, we'll see what happens. And so I ended up declining the other offer because overall I just felt like, you know what, this seems like a temporary fix and I don't want to find myself in the same situation where a year from now I'm like not seeing any growth here and I want to leave again. And so I declined the offer. And I had like 1 or 2 more rounds of interviews at the company that I'm at now. And they offered me the position. And like I said, for way higher pay than I was anticipating, which just worked out amazing. And I don't know, that just goes to show that a lot of the times we rely on our own timing instead of God's timing. And pretty much in that moment, I realized that God was telling me like, hey, I know you think this is good right now, but I have something better in store for you. And I'm a big believer in God and, you know, trusting his timing over our own. And I'm very glad that I did because I really felt like that was a door and an opportunity that God opened for me. It wasn't something that I really like could have done on my own. You know, those types of opportunities just kind of like show up. And you have to be willing to identify them. And sometimes in the moment, it's scary because you feel like you're turning down something that's stable for something that you're not sure if it's going to work out or not. But risk and reward, right? So anywho, those are my tips. So just to recap really quick, make sure that you do your research ahead of the time so you know what the market is offering for your experience level in the job industry that you're in. Put together a brag sheet. You need to be able to pull out, you know, your biggest accomplishments on the spot whenever you're negotiating your pay. And then during the interview, never throw out a number first. Let them be the ones to disclose what the salary range is for the position that you're interviewing for. Last thing, be realistic, but do not settle. You will find an amazing opportunity within the range that you're shooting for, but you just need to be patient. You have to do the work. You have to go through the process. Sometimes it's a long, difficult one. Sometimes, you know, you're able to find something amazing right off the bat, but just know that this doesn't happen overnight. It does require work on your part. You have to be diligent about applying different places. You have to be diligent about doing your research and preparing yourself for the interview as well. But nonetheless, the opportunity is out there. You just have to go out there and find it. If you enjoyed this video, if you thought the tips were helpful, let me know below. Like this video and please subscribe.